Hey, all you cool cats. Ready for a little fun? That's what I thought. Pop Talk, Scooby-Doo-Wah-Doo-Wah, Pop Talk. The fun never stops, you know. Pop Talk. If you're a nerd or a jock, run, don't just walk. Get ready to rock, you got Pop Talk.
Now, from Funko Hollywood, it's time for Pop Talk.
Hey everybody, welcome to Pop Talk. I'm your guest host today. My name is Dave, and let me tell you who we have here. It's Luke Wilson. Thanks for coming, Luke.
Thanks for having me, Dave. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So, being a collectibles company, do you collect anything?
I collect, I guess, books. I like books. I like book designs. I like albums, you know, records from the old days because they're just kind of larger format, and I always like the artwork and the photographs. My mom's a photographer, so I kind of grew up being interested in photography and looking at photography books. So I guess over the years, I've kind of bought some photographs here and there. And then in terms of maybe pop type stuff, I mean, for me growing up, I always loved the magazine Rolling Stone. And then, you know, if you go into some old record stores in the old days, they used to have old, like old Rolling Stones just in boxes, but they would always have kind of great artwork, you know, either great photographs by people like Annie Leibovitz, but then sometimes they'd have really cool kind of drawings or paintings. So over the years, I guess I've kind of collected some of those. And yeah, I mean, it's fun when you can, I mean, when you get into collecting stuff. And that's what always, you know, sometimes there can be something like, yeah, this person collects this, isn't that crazy? Where I always kind of try and have respect and admiration for what somebody collects, because I know that kind of feeling that it creates in you where you like something and, you know, it's maybe there's something calming about it, or it can also create a bit of a frenzy, which I think happens with some of the great stuff that you guys make.
So you said something there. You said albums from the old days, right?
Yes.
What do you mean by old days?
I'd say 60s, 70s, 80s. That's what I mean by the old days. I mean, I think you and I might be kind of near the same age. But yeah, I mean, that is one cool thing is vinyl's kind of come back. But I mean, I even grew up kind of more in the cassette era and the CD era, but always liked looking at the photographs and the designs, and then you open them up and they have what's called the liner notes, so you could see who played on a record. You know, it would just be like the cast in a movie where you could kind of learn more about different albums, and then you see these different kind of odd names that aren't necessarily the stars that show up, and like, okay, this guy's been on this album, and that album, and this album, like, yeah.
Is there an album that sticks out to you art form wise, like something that when you think of an album from the 60s or 70s?
I think, you know, the Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street's pretty incredible because they had this great photographer, Robert Frank, who had this kind of, at the time was thought of as a groundbreaking book of photography called The Americans, where he kind of basically went on a road trip. It was like a photographic version of like Jack Kerouac's On the Road. And then the Rolling Stones, it just shows kind of how cool those guys were. And I think Mick Jagger kind of spearheaded it maybe, but he got this guy, Robert Frank, involved in making the album design for that incredible album, Exile on Main Street, where interestingly enough, I think when it, you know, when I was just kind of reading when it came out, it was one of those things that wasn't necessarily a hit, but then over time, it's kind of grown into a masterpiece. And I'm sure that happens with some of this Funko stuff, where it like starts to catch on, where it gets released, but then it starts to become kind of a collector's item. And, and even like, you know, I live down over on the west side here of LA, but you know, you'll drive by these stores where I'll see kids lined up, or not just kids, but people lined up to get like these, you know, tennis shoes. And it always, you know, always think it's great, you know, like, gosh, kind of feel envious of them, you know, to have something, you know, like that, that they're that excited for, that they'll wait in line.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a passion, you know, it kind of mixes pop culture with your passions. And we always say that you can go into somebody's desk area, you know, where they live, and you can see this wall of, in our case, Pops, and you can kind of tell, okay, this person's kind of, you might have your preconceived notions by seeing the person, but then you see what they're into, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, that's pretty cool, that's interesting, you know?
Yeah.
You were raised in Dallas, is that right?
Yes, Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
correct.
describe a Saturday morning at the Wilson household when you were 10.
Well, it's interesting you say that because we weren't allowed to watch TV during the week. So Saturday mornings, we were allowed to watch cartoons. So we would just camp out in front of the TV, and that was during the Hanna-Barbera Hall of Justice era, stuff like that.
Yeah. How about breakfast cereals? Were you enjoying your sugary
Again, you know, my parents aren't going to come off well during this, but those weren't allowed either. we were a grape nuts family. Of course, grape nuts is now what I eat, but then I'd go to friends' houses and it would be like, you know, Dig 'em Smacks and Fruit Loops and Count Chocula. So all that stuff was kind of funny. I mean, my parents were, you know, they loved movies and stuff like that, and they loved music, but we weren't allowed to just sit in front of the TV, which is probably good for us. And now that I, you know, will sit around and watch TV, I definitely am glad I had those days where it was outlawed.
Yeah. Your brother Andrew and your brother Owen, okay?
Correct.
You had the three of you. You were all involved in the making of Bottle Rocket in '96.
Yes.
Okay. What was that intended to be, and what has that become for you?
Well, that was Bottle Rocket was our first movie, but at the time, my brother Owen had met Wes Anderson at the University of Texas in Austin in an English class, and they were both really into movies, and so my brother Andrew and I were too. And somehow Owen and Wes decided they were going to write a script together, which they did. And we knew a Dallas filmmaker, kind of semi-underground filmmaker who'd written a couple of scripts that had been made into films out here, this guy, Kit Carson. And he encouraged them to, he said it was, you know, it would be very expensive to make even a cheap, you know, feature-length film. You know, we didn't know that. We thought we could make just a cheap film. But even that would be, you know, a couple of $100,000 or something like that, which obviously we didn't have. So he said, you know, you guys should make a short film, you know, take the script and kind of shorten it down to a self-contained short film. And he was at the time associated with Sundance Film Festival, which was just kind of catching on at the time. And, you know, I think, you know, Reservoir Dogs had just opened there, and it was just kind of catching on. It was at the beginning of, and Robert Redford had started it. So we made a short film based on the Bottle Rocket feature-length script, and then submitted it and was accepted at Sundance, and then that began the journey of the feature-length script of this guy, James L. Brooks, who great writer, director, who did like TV show Taxi and the movie Terms of Endearment and As Good as It Gets, also produced The Simpsons. He was the first guy to put The Simpsons on, or I think it showed with the Tracy Ullman show in the early 90s. But yeah, that's how we got our start. That's what Bottle Rocket was kind of the beginning of our work here in the entertainment business.
Yeah, so I want to ask you something about your two brothers. So if you had to say which one is the heart, which of you is the brain, and which of you is the muscle, who would you attribute that to?
I don't know. I mean, I think we all kind of work together in that respect. But yeah, we're all very similar. I mean, very similar in a lot of ways, and then all kind of different. But I don't know, that's a tough one, because I mean, to me, I look at those guys and they kind of have all three of the things you mentioned, muscle, heart, and brains, where I don't know what I'd say I have of those three qualities. Kind of maybe leave that to other people to decide if I have them or not. That wasn't a question where I was supposed to cry, was it?
No, we could have.
Am I missing an opportunity?
Okay. There was a missed opportunity.
Was this an Oprah moment?
There's a few others. I got a few others, right.
They do have menthol they'll spray in your eyes if you can't get up the emotion. That's a little Hollywood trick. So if you ever see in a movie where, you know, guys, you know, just sitting there and then they cut back and there's a tear coming down.
Menthol.
That could be Visine.
Okay, all right. So now, was there one of you that spearheaded the interest in movie making more than another, and the other ones came through?
I think Owen definitely spearheaded the getting the movies made, but my oldest brother Andrew at the time was working in documentaries and kind of corporate films. And we, like I said, we were all really kind of into movies. Like if a movie came out, that's what we'd kind of get organized to go see. Like, you know, I just remember like when Escape from New York came out, I was like, okay, how do we get into this movie? It's rated R, or, you know, a movie like Office and a Gentleman or 10 with Bo Derek or The Warriors, all these kind of movies that whether the poster or the ad on TV kind of caught our attention. That was kind of what became our focus, in the same way that other guys were, you know, more focused on like the Texas Rangers or the Dallas Cowboys. And again, like even back then, I always appreciated my friends who were like so knowledgeable about like the Cowboys and going to the games and going to watch practices. But yeah, our focus was kind of on movies.
Well, it worked out then, I guess, right?
Yeah, and I mean, still learning about them and still interested in them. And I mean, that is one thing about the business, is it does kind of keep changing in an interesting way. I mean, you can get people that might kind of complain about it, and but yeah, it is interesting that it kind of keeps evolving over the years, you know.
Do you recall a moment that you realized that, you know, maybe this acting thing is going to stick for me?
I never thought about it that way, and I mean, whatever, maybe just kind of the way the business goes and kind of always, you know, kind of looking for interesting things to work on. I definitely think maybe in terms of watching, you know, Wes Anderson at work, I felt it more for him, where, you know, from Bottle Rocket, you know, it was a step up to Rushmore, and then from Rushmore to his next film, The Royal Tenenbaums, where, you know, shot in Dallas, where we were from, then shot the next one in Houston, where Wes was from, and then the next one he was shooting in, you know, Manhattan. So I think maybe on that, I certainly felt like for Wes, like, okay, this guy's really on his way, and you know, just happy to get the chance to you know, kind of work with them, and then work with the interesting people that that he hired and that he wanted to work with him. But I guess when I feel that I'm a part of the business is now when I go to other jobs and there's that guy or that woman we've worked together before, where now it does feel kind of like more like a community, where that now happens with every movie, or someone's worked with one of my brothers or one of my friends, to where you do feel kind of like a part of this business.
So you talked about Royal Tenenbaums. A few years ago, we, Funko, released a VYNL line. Yeah, let me see this. There we go. Okay, so this is the first time you've seen this?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely the first time. I briefly saw it when I walked in here, but that's pretty incredible. Is this a collector's item?
It is a collector's item. Everything we do is a collector's item, so you got a fan somewhere.
And here I've been going around thinking I never got a action figure, but it turns out I do have one.
There you go.
Wow, that's great. It's really funny. It's great. I mean, my first thought is like that I'd like to give it to one of my nephews or my niece, because they might get a kick out of it. But there's nothing better than a tie-in, you know, and we definitely grew up in the age of like the Millennium Falcon and stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure toys with movies kind of started before then, but that's when it really kind of caught fire, yeah. No, that's really cool.
So you've kind of stepped into our world of superhero genre, which you're doing now with the Stargirl. So tell me about how that's different than anything that you've done before, maybe.
I had not done a superhero project yet. I mean, I did a kind of a comedic one with Uma Thurman and Ivan Reitman, but yeah, to work with DC Comics and then Jeff Johns, who, you know, that was one of those people. I met him, and to me, just seemed like a great, really interesting guy. And the costumes that they made were incredible. I had this robot Stripe that they actually built, you know, that was, you know, 20 feet high, that had a cockpit and everything. So, you know, even being an older guy, you couldn't help but feel like a kid. And, you know, saw it with the crew, you know, people too, where everyone was excited to see these different props. But yeah, I really had fun being a part of the DC world.
So we're coming to the, this is the fun part of the show, okay? As though this has not been fun enough. This is called rapid fire fun. I'm gonna hit you with a bunch of questions, and off the top of your head, you tell me.
I'm not a rapid fire kind of guy.
Okay.
No.
Okay,
Let's take
here we
a
go.
shot.
All right, here we go. Number 1. What's your favorite movie of all time?
Chinatown.
If you could have had any role in any movie ever, what role would that be?
I was really interested in, somehow, it was after I'd moved out here, somehow got really interested in Howard Hughes and kind of read everything I could find about him, and there were some great books about him. So then when Martin Scorsese made that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, that's one of those ones where I thought, gosh, well, they did it, and they did a great job of it.
Fastest man on the planet.
What's your biggest fashion regret growing up, where you thought you were all that and you were indeed not all that at all, maybe?
I loved Miami Vice. Like, I happened to see the first episode with my dad, and we were both hooked. You know, you couldn't help but get influenced by Don Johnson's style in that, which people kind of kid about, but I mean, he really made it look cool, and still when I see the old episodes, I think he still looked great in that stuff.
Well, you had the white pants and the no socks.
White pants, no socks, like, you know, really kind of shirts like this color and stuff like that, but it seems like only they could do it.
Off, right? Okay. What is the best soundtrack in a movie ever, in your opinion?
And The Big Chill was an incredible one, just because it was all kind of hits from like the late 60s, so a lot of Friends had that, and Friends' parents had that. Yeah, and then I remember there was a great Joe Walsh song called In the City that was in the Warriors soundtrack. But yeah, soundtracks were always, you know, I think there were a lot of them that I was kind of into.
How about score-wise? Like, is there anything that the mood of the score that was pushed?
There was a great Terrence Malick movie called Badlands that had a really cool score, kind of different than anything I'd ever heard.
What's your most memorable theater experience ever?
I remember I saw, saw with a group of friends, saw Ghostbusters, opening weekend on a Friday night. I think it was this theater in Dallas, right off Central Expressway on Yale Boulevard. But in the parking lot, seeing people like high-fiving and doing lines from the movie, you might expect it like after a rock show. But yeah, I can really remember the Ghostbusters one. I was just reading about Steven Spielberg and The Fabelmans, that movie that's just come out, that's kind of about his upbringing, but he was kind of talking about that, how important it is to go sit kind of with people you don't know, and suddenly you're sharing this experience together. But he just worded it in this New York Times article in the way that I couldn't really articulate myself, but it completely made sense that, yeah, like you and me and her could all go not know each other and go sit and be watching the same thing. So you're kind of sharing something, you're definitely sharing something together. So hopefully with all this streaming, there'll still be those movies that, and not just superhero movies, that people will go see.
Who is an actor, director, or creative person in your realm that you feel like deserves a little more spotlight?
I know I worked with this younger director, Nimrod, on this movie Vacancy, but he does a lot of great work, but he's somebody that I feel like should be like a name, where he's just really talented, really skillful, great with, not just actors, but, how he interacts with, his crew, and just a really talented director. Some people you just feel like they didn't fall into it, but they're just kind of meant for it.
Talking about great creative work.
Well, we were busy talking, so I was just, and I don't have my glasses on.
Oh, okay.
So I just put this guy together.
Right. Casual, flip-flops.
Yeah, it's kind of a casual, kind of, could be anybody. Just kind of your basic LA guy, no different from you or me.
All right.
Could see this guy walking down Hollywood Boulevard, and as soon as we head out of here.
Okay, basic LA guy, there it is. So what's on your horizon? What's going on now? What's going on in the horizon for you?
I'm currently working on a film called Horizon, a Western with Kevin Costner that's going to be 4 movies. So to get the chance to work with somebody that I grew up with is really fun for me. And then to have them exceed your expectations, and then it starts to make sense, you know, how a person kind of got to where they are.
All right, well, we thank you for coming and
thank you.
spending your
I really
time with us,
enjoyed
man.
it. Yeah. Thanks for taking me down memory lane.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
And not making me cry.
All right, well, we still have time, so we'll make that happen. Folks, this has been Pop Talk. This is Luke Wilson. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks,
really
Dave.
appreciate
it. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
See you. Thank you.